Hey guys, Ian here, and I wanted to make a video for you guys and talk for a minute about flush mount glass, which is what I am doing in my 67 Nova. I'm not using original glass, and if you don't know what flush mount glass is, that's basically where you're taking the original window and the weather stripping and the stainless steel trim that covers the gap that goes from glass to the car. You have that stainless steel trim that covers that gap. You're doing away with that, and now you're basically just going to have the car that comes right out to the edge of the glass, and the two meet with a tiny 1/8 inch gap going around the glass. That's flush mount glass. So there's basically two ways to do flush mount glass. The first way is where you use the original window of the car, and then you're basically having to refabricate the entire window channel so that it gets a little bit smaller and comes down and meets the glass, so that at the end of the day you've really got yourself about an 1/8 of an inch gap going all the way around the window. That's the first way that you can do it. The second way that it's done is to buy aftermarket flush mount glass from a company like Fessler. So that's basically where you're buying a piece of glass that's just like the original glass, only it's ever so slightly bigger, just a little bit bigger, so that when you put it into the car, it takes up the space where the weather stripping and the stainless steel trim used to be. So now your glass basically comes out to meet the car, leaving you with a tiny gap going all the way around. That's flush mount glass. Here's where things get a little bit tricky. If you've got yourself an all-original 67 Nova with an OEM window opening, and you buy yourself a piece of flush mount glass and you go to put it into the car, you're not going to have much trouble in terms of getting that window into the car, because they know exactly what that window opening is. It's completely original. But in my case, I have replaced every single piece of sheet metal on this car with the exception of the doors and the rockers. So my front cowl, rear cowl, my roof, my quarter panels, sail panels, A-pillar covers, everything that you can think of that goes around the windshield opening in the front and rear has been replaced on my car. And as such, it is no parts of factory anymore. This naturally means that for me, installing flush mount glass into my car is going to be completely different than the process that somebody's going to go through when they've got themselves an all original car. As a result of this, my sheet metal is not where it actually needs to be. And so I have had to undergo just an absolutely huge task in moving all of the sheet metal to make it come out and meet my flush mount glass. So I'm about to show you exactly what I'm going through in this process behind me. And you know, if you're in a situation where you're replacing every piece of sheet metal on your car, you're going to see exactly how big of a job this can be. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will be this big of a job. If you've just done one or two pieces here and there, then it's going to be a much easier experience for you than it is for me. So without further ado, we'll bring the camera in, have a look at the car, and I'll show you what the process looks like for me. So we'll first have a look at the rear glass on the car. And the first thing that I want you to know is that when I went to go put the window in this car, I was unable to do so. You could not install the window into the car because the entire channel was literally too small. So the glass sat on top of the car instead of down inside the car. And the first thing that I had to do in order to solve this problem was that I knew this entire edge all the way across here had to be moved upward that way about 3/8 of an inch. And I knew that if I cut that edge, that piece right there, completely out of the car, then all of a sudden this, you know, the roof line of the car all the way across here would just completely change and flop around. And so as a result, I had to build an exoskeleton that goes all the way from one side to the other and welds to the roof of the car to hold the shape of the roof. Now, once I did that, I was finally able to set the glass down into the car, and at that point, I realized the car was not wide enough. There was, you know, the glass was literally touching the inside edge right here, and so I knew that I had to just take this entire edge and move it out this way about 1/4 of an inch. So if you'll notice, there's a cut seam. Can you see that cut seam with those little tack welds all the way down through there? You'll notice that I cut it all the way there. I cut it across here, and then I cut it across here, and in doing so, I took that entire edge and I moved it out this way about 1/4 of an inch. In doing so, that then created a great big gap across here, and you can see that I have kind of welded in a little bit of a patch panel across there. I had to patch this in as well in order to be able to move everything out, and then of course you had to have metal that connected your quarter panel to your cowl. In doing so, I also even had to come in here and I welded this little brace in place, just tacked it here and tacked it here, and that allowed me to start hammering through here and kind of move that metal downward without drawing this seam inward. So that's just a little temporary piece that I will ultimately end up getting rid of, and it just kind of helps me maintain the shape of everything as I'm working on the car. I also want to show you something else. I had to modify the height of this entire lip, all the way this channel, all the way across here. And so the way that I did that was, if you have a look on the inside, you'll notice that I have built this piece, a 3-piece system that runs across there, and that's completely custom fab that sits down inside the car. And so basically what I did was I changed the height of this metal right here to either raise the metal up or push the metal down, and you notice that I've put screws in it that hold everything in place so that I have the ability to sit there and modify everything before it's actually welded in place. So again, everything doesn't necessarily just have a problem fitting in the XY axis. It also has a problem fitting in the Z axis, where this could go up or down in order to ultimately meet the glass. So it's a lot more work than you might expect. Over here on the opposite side of the car, it's basically the same tail. Again, you can see that I have cut all the way down through here. I haven't started to do the sheet metal work here. You can see where I basically moved this entire piece kind of out that way. As a result, we now have this gap across here. We have a gap through here. So it's the same type of deal again, to where the entire channel of the car has to be moved in order to meet the glass. At some point, I'm even going to have to come in here and put a slit cut down this channel and push everything further down into the car so that this, is not so vertically high in order to meet the glass. So just very, very intensive fabrication work. On the front of the car, it's a similar story, but frankly, it's not as bad. Again, there was substantial amounts of fabrication work. I ended up having to come in here and just completely make this little section that ultimately causes the A-pillar cover and the cowl to meet each other, and to do so in a bend radius across here that met the glass. Not just that, you'll notice that there's a lot of, nasty cut weld work that was done all the way down through here. I actually had to pie cut that entire A-pillar right there, and I added about 1/4 of an inch of material up here in the top, whereas down here in the bottom, I added nothing. So I actually took that A-pillar cover and then spread it apart at the top and then filled it in. And in doing so, I made my A-pillar cover connect over here to the car where it was supposed to, and then it also came out here to the edge to meet the glass the way that it was supposed to. Now, granted, you've still got some body work that needs to be done. You can see that I've kind of filled in that area with weld right there, and once I put some little bit of filler in there, you'll never know that it was ugly, but nonetheless, a lot of fabrication work to do. On the opposite side of the car, it was pretty much the same story, frankly, only worse. I actually had to completely fabricate this entire leading edge of the A-pillar cover. So I took that A-pillar cover, split it right down the middle, fabricated the left-hand side. The right-hand side was aftermarket reproduction, and I did that so that I could ultimately weld this thing in place so that it would meet the glass. I've got all of my metal work done for the front glass. I don't have it done for the rear, and here in just a minute I'm going to go ahead and pop the glass into the car, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. Here in the back of the car at the left rear sail panel, you can see that I have done a slit cut right there. Do you see that? That slit cut runs all the way down through there and then ends there with a couple of tack welds along the way. And I've basically just pushed that metal inward to take up some space through here so that I'm changing the profile of that with that slit cut. All right, I'll show you the front of the car with the glass installed. Obviously, I have completely taped the inside and out with masking tape to protect it. And you can basically see what we're trying to accomplish here. We space everything with pieces of paint sticks, and then we have, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of an 1/8 to maybe 3/16 of an inch gap all the way around. And there's obviously going to be some filler work that gets done in order to make it really nice and straight all the way around. There's just no way with my metalworking skills that I'm going to get it any closer than that, frankly. But you can kind of see what we're going for. Paint stick width gap, and we're going to end up installing urethane that is going to hold the windshield in place. And the metalwork on the back of the car is not done. You can see that great big gap there has yet to be addressed. However, you can see we have a nice straight line down through here, and that then translates across the bottom of the car. And once you're all done with everything, I'm going to end up basically filling that little gap all the way around with like some black silicone, so it kind of makes a transition to the body and you don't necessarily have a cavity there. All right, that has been the basic rundown of installing Fezler flush mount glass into a car. And again, you know, I want to just stress that if you have an all original car with a factory original window opening, supposedly for you, it is going to be drastically easier than it is for me. But that's what I'm dealing with. And this is frankly probably about your worst case scenario. But, you know, that's how bad it gets. If you've got questions, ask them below in the comments. I want to stress that I have never built a car before. This is the #1 first build for me. Never done flush mount glass before. So if you're asking me questions, that's fine. I'm happy to answer them. But if you are doing so from the standpoint of assuming that I am a professional, I would probably advise against that. As a favor to me, if you would, click the subscribe button down below and the like button. Let YouTube know this is good content. I appreciate you guys watching. Very much appreciate you guys following along. Y'all have a great one. Take care.